Hello class, welcome to our first video lesson. In class we've been playing some pitches by ear, we've been learning some songs by ear, and today we're going to start to apply musical notation. And many of you may have already learned about musical notation in some of your previous classes, but we're going to review some of the concepts today so we can apply our instruments. Specifically today we are going to be focusing on learning about clefs and staffs and where to place notes on the staff. So let's begin. Now, before we go in depth in notation, I want to do something with you real quick. Now, we often think of notes as being higher or lower. So I'm going to play a little something for you really quick, and I want you to draw in the air with your finger where you think the direction's going. So is it going to be going up like that, or is it going to be going down? Listen. All right. Think about that for a second and draw in the air with your finger what you think it was. Now, you may have noticed that indeed the notes were going down in pitch. Now, being able to visualize it with something like drawing in the air like we just did might be pretty useful, but it's not very precise, which is where the staff comes in. With the staff, we are able to precisely locate where notes are, both just like in relation to rhythm and in relation to how high and how low the pitch is. All right, now we're going to transition over to my beautiful slides to show you the staff. So this is what the staff looks like here. It is comprised of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines and 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. Now, notes get placed on this staff relative to their pitch. So the higher you go up on the staff here, the higher the note is, and the lower down you go on the staff, the lower the note is. Ooh, even more beautiful slides. Now, on the slide here, I have 4 different options. These are also going to be on your quiz worksheet. And I'm going to play same notes as before, and I want you to circle on your worksheet which one of these 4 options corresponds with what I just played. So, let's listen. Now, just circle on your worksheet real quick. Which one of these options was the correct option, and how do you know? Now, you may have noticed we only have 5 lines and 4 spaces here, which means we only have about 9 notes to work with there. But how do we know where the notes go on the staff? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that will be determined by, drum roll please, the clef. Now, you may have noticed that in the first slide that there's this little symbol that's on the left-hand side of the staff. That is the clef. Now, as you can see, numerous examples of clefs. We have treble, bass, alto, and tenor. But for today, as this pertains to you guys specifically, we're going to be focusing on the treble clef and the bass clef today. All right, first we're going to begin with the treble clef. This will specifically pertain to my trumpet and French horn friends. Now, the spaces and the lines each correspond to different notes. So for the spaces from the bottom up, as you can see here, the spaces correspond with the notes F, A, C, and E. And for the lines from the bottom up, it's going to correspond with E, G, B, D, and F. Now, for my bass clef friends, my tubas and trombones, it's going to look just slightly different. So, for the spaces for the bass clef, it is going to correspond with the notes A, C, E, and G. For the lines for bass clef, it is going to be G, B, D, F, and A. Now, we could always just drill this in our heads until we eventually remember it, but I think it is much more fun and much more useful to come up with a phrase that sort of corresponds to the notes for the spaces and for the lines. So, for example, for bass clef, what I like to remember specifically for the phrase for spaces is all cows eat grass, because each of those words, the beginning of those words specifically, correspond to each of those notes. And on your worksheet, there's also going to be a section to fill out for the spaces and the lines for both bass and treble clef. And I also want you to come up with your own fun phrases on your own to also remember these concepts. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but sometimes you're in a pinch, you may forget your phrase, or you may be like, well, where's this specific note? Well, the clefs themselves actually tell you some information about where stuff is located. So if you look at the treble clef here specifically, you'll notice there's little swirl here aligns with this line, which is specifically for G. So this will always align with G, and you can use that as a sort of a relative guide to find other notes. So say you're trying to find B, and remembering, of course, that the notes go from A to G, and then it goes back around to A. So say you notice, oh, this aligns with G here. And then you can think, okay, if I want to find B, well, this note above here winds back around. This is A, and then one more up is B, which goes right on this line here. And the same goes for the bass clef as well, except for my bass clef friends, you'll notice these two dots frame this line right here, which is F. So if I wanted to find D, for example, but I can't remember where it is specifically, if I can remember, oh, this line right in the middle of here is F, I can go down here because I know, oh, one down, E, and another down, D, right here. So come up with those phrases. It's really useful for remembering more on the spot, like, okay, yeah, that's what these spaces are, that's what these lines are. But that can also be a useful tool for you as well if you get a little caught up. So for the purpose of today's lesson, when we get into reading some music, I just want to show you two basic rhythmic notations that you are going to see today. So the first one is the quarter note. Looks like this, a little filled in circle with a line coming out of it like so. And this symbol simply means that depending on where this is placed on the staff, you will play that note for one beat. And then you will notice this weird looking squiggly line over here. This is our quarter rest. And that doesn't get a placement on the staff. It just simply means that you do not play for one beat. And that will come in handy for you later when we begin to read some music together. All right, for this next section of our lesson today, I want us to pull out our instruments and play a little together. So I'm just going to be going over the first three pitches that we learned together, just so we can get them in our ear before we apply the notation. So the first we learned was a concert B flat. Sounds like this. All right, now I'm going to motion to you, and I want you to play that note for a second. Ready? Fantastic job, everybody. Now, the next note we're going to play real quick is our concert C. Sounds like this. Again, play that note real quick. Great job. And one more note for our lesson today is our concert D. Yes, I had to remind myself. Now, this is going to sound like this. All right, play that note. Ready? Go. And off. All right, great job, everybody. With those pitches, we are going to start getting into notation, but it's going to look a little different depending on which instrument you play. Now, the reason that your notation is going to look different depending on which instrument you play is because all of your instruments are in different keys. So trumpet's in the key of B flat, horn is in the key of F, and your trombone and tuba are in the key of C. So upon a first glance, looking at this, all of the notes across the board are EDC in each of these parts, right? EDC, EDC, EDC. Now, you might think, oh, maybe they'll sound the same, but because of those keys I was talking about earlier, since the notation is the same doesn't mean it's going to sound the same. Let's give this a listen. Wow, that sounded just so beautiful, didn't it? But in all seriousness, Just because they have the same notes doesn't mean it's the same pitches because of their different keys. Hence why Mary had an evil lamb in this case. Now, adversely, what if we take the same thing of Mary Had a Little Lamb, but we adjusted the notation in each of the parts to match the same pitch? Well, now it is going to sound like this. Now, we don't need to listen to the full thing to iterate my point, but as the notation shifted to reflect the same pitch, now it sounds all unison and together instead of all different and disorderly like it did the last time. Alright, looking more in depth at those first three pitches, I wanted to specifically point out what the notes are going to be depending on your part. So, for my trumpet friends, in the same order that we learned them, the lowest to the highest of the first three pitches, we have C, D, and E for my trumpet friends. For my French horn friends over here, your notes are going to be F, G, and A. And the trombone and the tuba both play B flat, C, and D. And then we are going to take these notes and we're going to play Mary Had a Little Lamb all together. All right, now that we have all of our notes figured out, we're going to use those three notes to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Now, on your worksheet, there are going to be written out parts. There's going to be one for trumpets, one for French horns, and one for my trombone and tuba friends. And first, I want you to simply follow along. Notice the notes going up and down while I play through it first. All right, I'm going to count in. 1, 2, 3. All right. Now that you know how it goes, I'm going to conduct and count. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to count you through it so that you can play through it and get a feel for it. All right, let's give it a try, shall we? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, Very good. That sounded just amazing, I imagine, and I cannot wait to hear it in class with you. All right, before I conclude this video, I just want to go over some of the resources that are available for you, as well as this video. So the first one is this note identification game. So as you can see, shows a staff here with a clef and a whole variety of notes for you to choose from. So let's just go over what's in the settings. So here you can customize what clefs you use. You can do just treble clef, you could do just bass clef, or you could have it where both of them can show up at the same time. So you can practice with the different clefs. You can change the range here. I personally would recommend having it set just outside the staff. So like on this space outside the staff and this space outside the staff, just so you can practice getting the lines and the spaces that we've talked about in class today. You can also choose to have lines and spaces show up, or lines only and spaces only. Key signatures, we're not really going to get into that, but that's there. You can change the note values as well for quarter, half, or whole notes. Either way, it just shows one note at a time, so it's more to practice getting the notes on the staff and naming them. This has a bunch of different stuff for like solfege, scale degrees, but we don't have to worry about that. Letters are just fine and dandy. Now, here's some helpful stuff for you as well. If you're struggling, you can turn on a helper here, and it'll actually show you where the lines and the spaces are. This can be great for you if you get stuck or you happen to forget where the note is. You can do accidentals, which simply will add flats or sharps, which some of you have, but you can also just practice without them as well. There's also this note filter if you wanted to filter out certain notes for any reason. This will just tell you when the next question will come. It'll be either after audio, wait a second, immediately, etc. But what you could also do is this challenge mode turn into a bit of game. So you can set a time limit for yourself, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, a million minutes, whatever, or a question limit. And just to demonstrate, without that, it just simply shows up on here. I'll put in a note, I'll just try and correctly guess, where are they on the staff? That looks like an E to me. If you get it wrong, it shows red, has a little percentage thing, and it'll also allow you multiple guesses. So I think this is actually B. There we go. Or challenge mode. This is exciting. You can set a time limit. I'll just do 1 minute, for example, or a question limit. And what you could do is, if you want to do it without a question limit, you could just set a time limit and see like, oh, how many of these notes can I guess in 1 minute? Or you can maybe set a bit of a goal for yourself. Be like, I want to get, this might be kind of crazy, but like 20 of these in 1 minute. And then it'll just go as soon as I get out of here. You can start the challenge. Okay, bah. And then just try and guess as many as you possibly can. And this can be a useful resource for you to use just to practice identifying the notes with the lines and the spaces. All right, the next resource I have available to you is Chrome Music Lab. Now, there are a ton of different stuff on here that you can look at and play with. It's honestly really fun, both as a resource and as something just to mess around with. But for the purposes of this lesson, I want to look at the Songmaker, as there's a little bit of an extra credit opportunity for you here. So let's review how this works. So essentially, you'll notice there is this grid of blocks. There's these empty ones here, and then there's these ones with little dots down here. There's these like thick lines that separate up and down. So essentially, you can just click to add different notes like so. And you can also add rhythm down here. And so that'll allow you to build sort of melodies as well as a bit of a rhythm section to go along with it if you'd like. So down here, you can also change the instrumentation of the melody. So say I wanted a woodwind sound, I could change to woodwind. And I can do that, or I could change the percussion as well. Oh, it's electronic again. We do blocks if we wanted to. Cool. And then here you can actually adjust how fast or the tempo of the song is. So say I wanted it to be slower, I could slow it down, speed it up, whatever I want. There is a whole bunch of settings. You don't really have to mess around with this if you don't want to, but you can change the length of the piece, how many beats are in each bar, how the beats are split, the range of notes you're working with, so you can add more octaves or less octaves. I might bring it down to 1 octave for now. You can choose where it starts, like middle, low, or high in the note, and you can choose different scales as well. So I'll just leave it at 1 octave for now. And then, you can just come up with some stuff like this. See, let me just put a little, I'm not really doing nothing purposeful here, just kind of adding a bunch of stuff. And then you click play and you can listen to your composition. It's a little delayed for some reason, but I still think that's pretty good. And if you want to mess around with this and see if you can compose like a small little melody, just mess around with that a little bit, you can click here to save it, and you can copy your link and you can turn it into our Google Classroom for some extra points. Just something to consider, but yes. And then also, I will have a wonderful Kahoot attached as well, so you guys can review the concepts on your own in a fun game format. All right, great work today, class. Today we looked at the staff and the clef, and we looked at how to find the notes on the staff in relation to our clefs. We got to learn a few of our notes on our instruments, and we got to play Mary Had a Little Lamb together, and we reviewed some fun resources for you to use to review the concepts we learned today. I'm very excited to see you all in class. Remember to fill out your quiz worksheet, and I hope you have a wonderful day.